Oklahoma, Wisconsin, and LSU, and several other programs are showing how it's done in the transfer portal. And by the way, Notre Dame and Miami fans need to chill. There's still plenty of time.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith. Thank you very much for checking this out. I am a longtime recruiting analyst, and I love talking the portal, and that's what we're going to do today. And it is going to be a lot of fun because it's a broad scope. We've got portal questions about several programs around the nation. What they're doing, is it good, is it bad? I'm going to go through a list, let fans talk about it in the chat. And if you listen to this later on, fire away as well. We're definitely going to talk about Miami and Notre Dame fans complaining online. And they're doing a lot of it because their teams are not off to hot starts in the portal. But remember, just like in recruiting, it is not what you do early. It is who you sign. Both of those programs are going to be just fine. We'll get into Notre Dame and Miami and a few other schools as well, just a little bit. But to start, Wisconsin, especially Oklahoma, I'm going to dive into their class a little bit, and a few other teams. Like, what are they doing that makes their success more than likely? And it's pretty simple. Got to have money. You got to have effort. Those are obvious, but you got to understand your needs. If you take nothing else from this podcast, know that these teams are hitting their needs. And just let me use one example here, right? This is a kid that is committed to Wisconsin. You got to do your due diligence. He's not from a great program per se, Southeast Louisiana. Jalen Domingo, I'm not sure how he pronounces it, but the stats don't lie. This is a kid that is going to help them early. They need a big-bodied receiver. He's 6'2", 210, and he's got production. 52 catches last year, 857 yards, 16 and a half yards per catch, and then he also had 11 touchdowns. Now, I know it's not P4, but he started every game. He was their mainstay. He's a guy that could play boundary, he could play flanker, you could move him around, and he was very consistent throughout the season. Ask Mississippi Valley State if he's any good. He had 3 touchdowns against them alone, and same thing against Nichols. I think this is the kind of guy that you have to find in the portal in today's world, because most teams, not all, but most teams do a pretty good job of keeping their critical players at home. They pay them and they stay. But if a guy like this, whether it's FCS, Division II, whatever, think about Trinidad Chambliss this past year up there at Ferris State that Lane Kiffin found for Ole Miss. Nobody was really talking about him, but Lane was all about it, and that's kind of turned out well. Do your due diligence, make it work. Congrats to everybody up there, Coach Reed, everybody at Wisconsin for getting him, and he's just a microcosm to that end. Now, I'm using Wisconsin here as one example, but there are several others as well. The number one thing you need to know, it's early. And like, I love Wisconsin's class. I think in terms of where they are to end the 2025 season to what they've done so far, you could argue Wisconsin's improved its roster better than anybody. That's kind of hard to believe, but they've just dumped a lot of money into NIL, and their coaching staff's gotten into it. It's all hands on deck. And to that end, I also want to talk about Oklahoma a little bit. This is their class so far. Obviously, if you watched anything of Oklahoma towards the end of the year, struggle bus, third and longs, passing game, etc. They would do well on some of the scripted plays early in the game, but after they get into the flow, they would struggle some. Well, they go out and get Virginia's Terrell Harris, 56 catches, 809 yards, 14.4, and 5 scores. And this is so wild. Parker Livingston played at Texas last year. Now he's going to Oklahoma. Like, Texas kind of pushed him out the door. Okay, he's got 3 years of eligibility, 26 catches, 491 yards, 18.9 yards per catch, and 6 scores. So he scored a touchdown every 4.5 times he touched the football. Congrats to OU. Kenny Ozuwalu, defensive end, 6'4", 270. He's got 3 years of eligibility left. He had 22 pressures, 2 sacks, 17 stops, and 16 hurries last year for the University of Texas San Antonio Roadrunners. I love that nickname, by the way. Then they got a Marion Harris, a kid that had a great game against Mizzou, and they got a great pass rush, 6'7", 310-pound offensive tackle. He had an 87 pass grade against Mizzou. Like, that's a good player. 678 snaps last year. 2 guys from Colorado State, Rocky Beers, tight end, 6'5", 250, 31 catches, 388 yards, 12.5 yards per reception, 7 touchdowns on just 31 catches. That's pretty impressive. Lloyd Avent, same school, Colorado State, 5'10", 210, running back, 415 yards, 4.6 yards per tote, 5 scores. A lot of offensive power here, except for Ozowalu, These are all offensive guys. And then they get a center. This is really impressive. Out of Western Kentucky, Caleb Nida, 6'2", 297. He was the starting center there. They got Hayden Hansen, the power blocking tight end from Florida, 6'8", 270. He also had some receptions too, 30 catches for 248 yards, a couple of scores. And then they took one guy that's got super high upside. He just couldn't break through at Oregon, Dakota Fields, a corner that's 6'2", 200 pounds. He only played 41 snaps this past season. But all of these things just show you finding the right players that fit your needs can come from anywhere. Again, Oklahoma gets a guy from Western Kentucky. The receiver for Wisconsin, Southeast Louisiana. Talk about changing culture. Hats off to Wisconsin. Hats off to Oklahoma. And hats off to Indiana. I'm just going to dump into this question now, and I'll come back to it in a little bit. This is my biggest one because the only team that has completely destroyed all the metrics over the last 2 years would be the Indiana Hoosiers. They don't have hardly any 4 and 5 stars. They don't meet the recruiting criteria, 50% or more, like Bud Elliott's scale and all that. That's the same thing that I use. We look at the same schools the same way. We know who's probably going to make it, but Indiana's that one. So I'm just going to pose this question now. If Indiana did hit again, they got a quarterback, got the young man from TCU, Mr. Josh Hoover. Can they run it back? Can they be a top 10 team, maybe a top 5 team again? We're going to come back to that in a little bit. But right now, I just want to talk about one thing. Notre Dame and Miami and Notre Dame fans, whatever order you want to put it, both groups need to chill. You have first world problems. I was just on the 24/7 Canes board. I was on a couple of different Notre Dame boards, seeing both fan bases kind of complaining about the portal on X, etc. You've got 2 great programs. Relax. It's the first week of the transfer portal. Both of those schools are going after big fish. You're going to miss more than you're going to hit, just like in recruiting. It's okay. Over the next 48 hours, it's almost going to be impossible based on how many guys they've had scheduled for visits, how many other guys we probably don't know about because everybody's secretive. If Miami and Notre Dame don't both have a couple of commits, and probably really good players as well. And through the weekend into early next week, let's see where Miami and Notre Dame are. I'll probably talk about that Monday or Tuesday next week. Don't freak out if you're Miami. Don't freak out if you're Notre Dame. It's going to be just fine. Now, to that end, I'm going to have some portal questions when we come back. And again, we're going to talk about some of this stuff and just kind of look at it from a perspective of what can you do to improve your roster and get it going right now. Not like just kind of, but like really, really good. Florida, some other schools. We're going to talk about some of that coming up next here on the Portal Podcast. But I also want you to ask questions. If you're in the chat, fire away. I'll get to some of that here in just a minute too. That is next, right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show was brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoffs, we're down to the Final Four, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action with single game day of the playoffs, because right now every college football playoff game is a big game. FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. So just check it out. Here's what you got to do. Just go into the app. You're going to check in and see what team you want to go with. You're going to see what different boosts and opportunities they have. Take a shot on an underdog if you like, or if you think that like Indiana's the favorite to win it. If that's what you want to ride with, that's fine, but make sure you check out the app. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long, so visit FanDuel.com to get on your college football playoff profit boosts every single game day. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out the Everydayer Club down in the description below. All you got to do is click on the link. All of your audio will be without ads for $5 a month or for $50 a year. And there's a Discord and more to check out. Check out the Everydayer Club. Now let's just go through some questions. 2 things right off the top. Quarterback dominates the market. Who are you getting a quarterback if you need one? That's the automatic question for everybody. But the one that I look at for every school, when I look at a portal list, who's visiting, who's committed, who you're losing, it's the same every year. Offensive and defensive line. Does your school, whoever you root for, are they getting offensive and defensive linemen? It's checkbox. for whatever reason, offensive linemen transfer, especially the top guys, at a lower rate than any other position. It is not close. I have no idea why. But to that end, almost every single school really, really needs linemen. Ironically, I just talked about Miami and Notre Dame before the break. There are two schools that could probably get away with not taking any portal linemen this year out of 130 some. They've recruited the high school ranks at elite level. They can do that, but not many can. And they still could take one. You never know. If that's the case for your school where you're in a great spot, you're ahead of the curve. But just ask yourself this. How many portal linemen do we need on the offensive side? Let's start with that. And did we screw up in recruiting to get ourselves in this boat, or is it just bad luck? And we've already had a couple guys declare for the draft a year early. That's tough. LSU went through that this past year. They lost not one, but both of their offensive tackles a year early to the draft. That's rough. That's really rough. So if you're that school that doesn't need it, great. But if you're like just about everybody, the 98%, who you got? Who you have visiting? If you really want to know if you're going to have success, look at that. Because this past year, many people denoted LSU is the number one class, and it really wasn't. Why? They lost those tackles. They didn't replace them. They had some good young players, but playing freshmen and sophomores at offensive tackle in the Southeastern Conference, yeah, it's not good. They were turnstiles for part of the year, and it killed LSU. So if you're not getting offensive linemen, that's a problem. Now let's flip it to the other side. Are you getting anybody, even if it's just a depth piece? I want to talk about this kid again, because I think this is what a steal. Venables and his staff for Oklahoma does such a great job. Kenny Azawalu, again, 22 pressures, 2 sacks, 17 stops, 16 hurries last year for UTSA. The Roadrunners, one of my favorite nicknames in college football. He's got 3 years of eligibility, 6'4", 270. I don't know if he's going to start, but he's going to play. If you can just get guys like that push the starter or the incumbent, you're ahead of the groove here, because you're rotating guys on defense anyway. It's a little easier to attract them. But Oklahoma kind of hit that curve and they took it just right. What about your school? Do you have any defensive linemen coming in that you really trust at all? Yes, no? And if you don't, how many do you think you needed and you didn't get? Oklahoma is just one of those examples. Here are a couple others to think about. I talked about Wisconsin a minute ago. They've gotten 4 corners already. They had a problem. Defensive backs. Getting 4 corners just out of the gate is insane. Again, I'll come back to it. You could argue Wisconsin, for where they were to where they are now, the start of the portal to today, has improved its roster more than any other team in college football. I don't expect them to have the number one class because their roster is not so bad. They're going to go take 25 guys, 30 guys. Penn State's probably going to win the portal in that regard because they had so many departures. They'll win it. Now, I'll do my own podcast just on Penn State because I got so much volume sometime probably next week. But are you meeting your needs and you're getting some impact guys? They got Kai Bates. They got Javon Robinson. They got some other good players coming in. Wisconsin's all of a sudden got DBs that can compete at the elite level. I mean, the Arizona State kid started for 2 years. You got him to go from Arizona weather to Wisconsin. You obviously have some NIL. Congrats to them. One other school that I want to mention here, and that's LSU, in terms of being sneaky. I talked about this a little bit with a couple of schools over the last week. Watch out for who they go for, and kind of the under the radar kids, kind of like the receiver going to Wisconsin. But there's talk about Damon Williams possibly ending up at LSU, but Sam Levitt was just at LSU with Kiffin. I don't know what's going on there. Watch out for Miami as well. Damon Williams is a great prospect. Love watching him play. He's got 2 more years of eligibility. He's at the University of Washington. But that's the same thing with Kiffin in general. He finds under the radar guys, and there's always big name fish. He'll go after them too. He's all the above. And I think more teams should be that way. Just to add to it, if Levitt ends up going to Tennessee, he's supposed to visit there later this week. I'm just going to ask this open-endedly. Does Tennessee go all in and make a title run? In other words, spend a ton of money, maybe even quote-unquote overspend, because their fans are anxious. They didn't beat a team with a winning record this past year. That's rough. That's really rough. But if you get Levitt, you've got a few other good receivers coming back. You've got some really talented young linemen. I would think they'd have to go in. Maybe it's a linebacker, maybe it's a corner. I don't know their roster well enough I'll dive in with Locked On Vols sometime in the next week or two. But watch out for Tennessee. That's a really interesting team. So where is your team at? What do you think? If you've got any questions, fire away. I'm going to head over to the chat now and just kind of go into it, have a little fun. Let's see what we got today. First thing, Justin, Wisconsin cooking with hot grease in this portal window. Yes, they are. Hats off to the Badgers. They've done a really good job. Nick, I think Brian likes the Domingo kid pickup more than Badger fans do. I'm curious his thoughts. I like his size and production a lot. Look, this is not hard. Over 50 catches, 6'2", 210. If you're a Wisconsin fan and you're not happy about that, I can't help you. Jeremiah Smith's not transferring over to Wisconsin. Like, what do you expect here? You have to find guys with upside. The portal is about upside. There are very few plug-and-play guys that are coming from the P4 at boundary receiver, at defensive tackle, at quarterback. There are like 3 or 4 of those guys at each position. That's it. So this kind of player, especially for probably what they paid, give Wisconsin credit. Katie, what's going on, Katie? Washington quarterback signed an NIL deal and immediately jumped in the portal. If players can renege on deals, this is a good point. Like that, the school should be able to too. This is a very touchy thing, and he may not be able to get away with this. This is a great question. We talked about this, I believe it was yesterday. Damon Wilson with Georgia. He had a deal signed. It just started it, and he goes to Missouri, transfers. They're suing him. Will Washington go after Williams because he signed the deal if he transfers to LSU, to Miami, or wherever? They could. If the ink is dry, that's a deal. To me, that's pretty much saying we're calling your bluff. The reported number was $4 million that he was staying at Washington for. That's a lot to leave on the table. Like, if he's going somewhere else and get more, okay, but that makes me question him a little bit. If $4 million to stay with the guy that you rode with, you transferred, well, you flipped your commitment to Arizona because the coach went from Arizona to Washington, so you followed him, and now you're going to leave him because you're making $4 million and that's not enough. That makes me feel a little bit concerning. What we got here? Sports used to be about commitment. Sport used to teach commitment as a life lesson. I'm starting to be disgusted with my own generation. That's from Katie. I can't argue with that. Like, there has to be more accountability. And I'm not saying I want Demond or anybody else to get hammered, but somebody's going to lose big here. One of these schools is just going to say, screw it. And a quarterback one could be the first of it because Washington's toast if they don't have Demond next year. We all know it. So would they sue? Anybody wants to comment, fire away. Katie, will Miami go into the portal to replace Bain and Mesidor, or do they roll with what's on the roster now? I asked a few people around the program that cover it, nobody inside the office, but they think they'll be selective, but they might take one guy on the outside, possibly. Just depends on who it is. It's inside that they're more concerned, which it's just hard to find D tackles. So join the club, Miami. Salty Virginia Peanuts. Happy Wednesday afternoon, Portal Podcast Nation. What's going on, Salty? Notre Dame is failing horrible. It's shameful. Actually, it's a little early, man. That's from Xander Cruz. There's a long way to go. They got some pretty good people coming in for visits, too. Martin needs to be fired. His idiocy will cost Notre Dame a chance to win a title. I don't agree with that. Archer settled down. Marcus Freeman flirting with the Giants for 3 weeks doesn't help either. Well, that part's true, but let's be real here with Notre Dame. They got visits today, tomorrow. They're really, really good players, defensive linemen, etc. And this is kind of the message in general. There isn't any one school, none, that you need to worry about right now. If it's a quarterback and you only had like 1 or 2 options really that you wanted, and that's gone, that could be the exception. But even with linemen, there's going to be more out there to get. If your school isn't exactly killing it yet, whoever it may be, it could be somebody that's not a Texas Tech or an Indiana or a Miami or whatever it does, has all this big money, but there's still fits out there for your program, no matter who it is. We are very early in the portal. So even after the portal window closes, you got to remember the kids aren't getting in and signing in that window. It's over on the 16th, but the contracts will still be negotiated out. I got a text from an agent right before this show. Had a deal all but done. But another school came in at the last second offering at least 100, if not 200 grand more for his player. These things happen. There's a lot of different things that go on. That school that's offering more is probably going to win that battle. That's just the nature of the beast. It's okay. All right. How much does a top recruiting class play into the portal choices and spending? It's massive. This is a great question. From Evan1788. So again, how much does a top recruiting class play into the portal choices and spending? If you think you can have top 10 classes, you're going to dump more resources into the high school level because it's more consistently going to help you win. The portal is more boom or bust. Been proven. Look at Florida State in 23, same process in 24, undefeated to 2 wins. Did the same thing, and they were terrible. High school recruiting is where it's at. I know a lot of fans don't want to hear that because it's very linear on who gets the best players, but that's college football. Ohio State's always going to be good because they recruit elite high school players. Texas is always good because they recruit elite high school players and there's about 15 at the schools. You know who they are. But at the same time, look at Miami and Oregon. Let's use those for an example. To Evan's point, again, how does top recruiting class play into the portal choices and spending? That doesn't mean that Oregon with Dan Lanning or Miami and Mario Cristobal don't selectively go and get players. Messidor was a transfer a few years ago from Miami. They went and got him from West Virginia. Really good player. The middle linebacker this year, transfer portal guy. Keontae Scott, transfer portal guy. Their starting center this year, transfer portal guy. Obviously, Carson Beck, transfer portal guy. When they do go after guys, they do a great job of researching. Give Miami credit. In a lot of ways, you could say Miami won the portal more than anybody else this past offseason because they had a team that we thought was on that verge of being a team that could go deep in the playoffs, but they had holes, especially in their secondary, and they fixed it. Congrats to Miami. That's what you got to do. Not everybody is able to do that every single year. So keep that in mind. Last note, there's going to be, from what I'm hearing, quite a few announcements over the next few days. I'll do my best to go through some of them, probably a little bit more broad from Thursday and Friday show. Just go through the list, like who's committed, talk about some of the announcements via Hayes Fawcett and other places, and just give my take on them. Just more newsworthy and give a little extra in what's going on. But there's so much volume, it's hard to just pick a couple of schools. It really, really is. All right, what we got here? SMO Niner. What are your thoughts on Simmons, the offensive tackle from Florida State? He got in the portal. If he got back, if Florida State got him back or anything, if that's what we were alluding to, I have not seen anything. I've been researching a whole bunch of stuff with specific schools this morning. I tried to stay off social media for the most part, but he was a guy that everybody thought was going to be good. And then for 3 years, he couldn't break into the lineup. And it's not like Florida State recruited O-line at a high level. So that makes me a little bit nervous that Lucas Simmons is just a guy. He looks the part. Great guy. For 3 years, he just toiled in anonymity. He didn't make a dent in Florida State's depth chart to the point where he actually played. He was backup for a couple of years, like second team, but never played. Florida State, they've got one guy committed. They've got a few other guys they're trying to bring in. They could be okay. And they've got a few younger guys that they're pretty comfortable with being starters down the road. Maybe even this year, they're younger players, but they're still going to need a couple more portal guys for O-line, one at least for depth. That'll be pretty interesting. He committed to Wisconsin today. I mean, he's a flyer because he's not played. If you're talking about Lucas, I don't know. There aren't many tackles that are built like Lucas. He's 6'7", 6'8". I've stood next to him, and it's legit. He's massive. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's long as a freaking tree. Can he be a good player for Wisconsin? Probably. But there's just no film of him really playing at Florida State. And he's been there 3 years. He's got 2 years of eligibility, senior, fifth-year senior. We'll see what happens, but I don't have a lot of confidence because 3 years at Florida State with how bad their O-lines have been, that makes me pretty nervous. So with that, thank you very much for checking out the Portal Podcast live show. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll have other shows coming up. I'm doing a crossover with Blackerby on Locked On Auburn. I'm doing crossover with Locked On Sooners and some other shows over the next couple of days. I'll probably be with Ryan Herring's Locked On Wisconsin, probably Seiko, Locked On Nittany Lions, and several others. Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers. A lot of these teams are pretty fascinating, and I'm probably looking forward to Matt Moscona from Locked On LSU more than any other because it's Kiffin. Lord only knows what they'll come up with. But over the next couple of weeks, between the live shows and the crossovers I do, there's going to be all kinds of Portal Scoop. Make sure you like and subscribe. Check us out each and every day right here on the Portal Podcast, and we will see you again soon.